Welcome, everyone. You are listening to The Last Dinosaur, and I'm your host, Chris Aversano. This is the podcast where we explore the evolving maritime landscape and hear from innovators leading the change. Today, we're talking about connections, something that is too often missing in maritime. And my guest today to talk about that is Josephine Lee, the founder of The Hood, a new digital platform designed to strengthen the human fabric of our industry. Josephine's journey reflects something bigger than just building a tech product. It's about creating space for seafarers, shore-based professionals, and industry newcomers to be seen, supported, and part of the wider community. We're going to unpack what led Josephine here, how the Hood is evolving, and why seafarer connectivity is no longer something we can afford to ignore. Josephine, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Chris. Pleasure is all mine.
So let's talk a little bit about how did you get here? What sparked the Hood, the platform? A little bit about your background in the maritime space, because I love to set that tone for the listeners on kind of how we got to this point.
Well, the Hood started not overnight, definitely. It was a long journey in the making. I think the starting point is that it started straight after the COVID pandemic. As you know, that anyone working in crewing in shipping industry knows that there is a time in their life that can be split and being defined by pre-COVID and post-COVID world. So for us in crewing industry, the COVID pandemic changed a lot of the way we are handling and dealing with seafarers. I remember at that time I was just a crewing superintendent, rather very fresh in the industry. I think I was working maybe only 1 or 2 years in the industry at that point. And there is such chaos and struggle. I was trying to bring crew safely home after months and years of being on board. We're trying to replace the crew safely. I think even going so far as calling port authority, trying to call the embassy, begging them to let my crew to take the flight home. And I was actually shocked about how much effort that would take during the pandemic. Then, of course, there is the aftermath of the pandemic with the mental health issues of people being locked up on board the vessel for so long without shore leave, and people that really struggle to adjust to the new life after that. And then, if you know that the shipping industry basically really explode after the pandemic. There are many ships owner ordering new ships, the crews that need to be provided to these ships. So we struggle with the second phase where there is a shortage of crew, the skilled seafarer, as you say. And I start asking the questions, why there is such a huge problem that we are facing. It's not like we don't have the crew, but we're constantly saying that we don't have enough crew. The crew are struggling. I thought to myself at that point to ask the seafarers, to ask the mining agency, to ask the recruiter directly. So many of them told me that they have decided to move ashore after the pandemic because they don't want to go back to sea anymore. Many of them even told me that they were only working so that their children doesn't have to go to sea like them. So I think this is very worrying and we must do something to change that. So I started out by asking questions directly to my seafarer at that time who are still on board. People are waiting at home, to the recruitment companies that we were working with. But the questions are very basic. How do you apply for a job? How do you find the job application process? Where do you get the seafarers? How do you process them? And starting from there, I realized that number one is social media is 70% of the time the place that people look for the job and people advertise for job. I know that it is very powerful platform, but there are so many issues. From the seafarer side, there are issues of scammers, of bribery, of fake accounts, about data privacy issues. From the recruiter point of view and mining agencies, there are lots of struggle about how to put things in the same place, how long it takes to process. And Facebook is just for everyone. LinkedIn is very costly in order to hire seafarers, based on the volume and the timing. So I kind of just pick out on the platforms that is very popular, the social platform at that point. You have Facebook, you have LinkedIn, you have Reddit, you have TikTok, you have Instagram. I put them down and I list out all the good and bad about each platform. What is it good for and why is it bad? And then I'm thinking how to put it in a place, in a workflow place, that everyone can use it and everyone can take advantage of the good side, but we remove the bad side from this platform. And there, after many months of head scratching and, paper throwing into the baskets like any of the Hollywood movie, the hood was born. Was actually everyone keep asking me why is the hood, is it like a gangster name? Are you trying to be like, something cool and edgy? And they say, yes, yes, we're trying, but people think too much about the hood as it is something that out of the ordinary. But the name actually coming from the double meaning of number one is a time in your life. So you have like your childhood, the motherhood, and then the second part of the meaning is a group of people that basically sharing the same characteristic like the brotherhood, the neighborhood, the sisterhood. So I thought it's a perfect place building a digital home, and it's cool and it's young. And we wanted it to be the place where people can trust. So first and foremost, it should be a community. So starting from there, yes, we have the first idea about the hood.
So that's really interesting because, first of all, a lot of things to unpack, which I think is great. One of the things I'd love to talk about a little bit, because when I first was approached for you to come on the podcast, my instinct, and I'll be very frank with you, was, well, it's just LinkedIn. Like, okay, great. LinkedIn for Seafarers. Do we need to talk about this? And again, I was kind of met with a little bit of a shoulder shrug. I'll be honest with you. Now, you did mention a word there that you want the platform to be young. I think those days may have passed me by a little bit, but at least age-wise, my enthusiasm and attitude is maybe more befitting of the platform. Saying that, talk about, and I love the idea of how you put the pros and the cons of all those different social media platforms, including LinkedIn and others. And how did you get the idea that this social, professional, hybrid, how did you get to that point where you are today? Because I think that that's fascinating in the light of competing with all of those platforms that people are already working on.
I like the fact that you mentioned LinkedIn because I know LinkedIn is a great platform for professionals. But if I be so bold to, to pose you a question, is that I think that LinkedIn is only good if you are already very well established in the industry, if you have a great network of connection, because the first thing you're going on LinkedIn is that you find the people you already know and you connect with them on LinkedIn. So if you are looking at a seafarer who fresh out of Maritime College, someone who is very new, someone who is just a cadet, they have no idea how to connect with people on LinkedIn. They can only follow the company. And the interaction on LinkedIn, you might disagree with me, is carry a much more corporate tone than it is warm, inviting, and it is opening for newcomers. So I talk to a lot of my seafarers, especially those who coming from developing countries in the Philippines, in Vietnam, in Indonesia. None of them wanted to go to LinkedIn. They said that they could have tried, but they thought Facebook is much better for them. And this is what I understand why LinkedIn has never been very successful in hiring seafarers specifically. And so where we are right now, why is the social/professional platform hybrid? And why is it set us apart from other platforms like Facebook or LinkedIn? Because the hood, unlike this generic purpose platform, we are built with the most inexperienced member of our maritime workforce in mind. We are not building it for the company. We're building it for these people, for the maritime student, for the cadet, for the people who are looking for a fresh start in the shipping industry, in order to make it as meaningful as possible and as helpful as possible for them. We have to decide that, first of all, it's an open space. It, of course, is like the social media, so that they can build their own community, they can join the community. But they must also function as a reliable online directory for those young people to come and find the right kind of people to connect with, to find the right kind of company for their need. So instead of being an open space where everyone can just create a business account, everyone can just say, I'm hiring for a job, check my company out. It's a much more restricted space in that term. We kind of audit the companies that we inviting them on. We kind of educate them that what they are coming on for, who are the target audience. Whenever we invite a new company in, we always say that people are going to look to you for this information. Please make sure that you set it up as clear as possible and as approached as possible for these people. And of course, we provide the people with a place of trust and very carefully vetted member of the community. We provided them with the community governing support so they can report when there is a issues, they can report where there is a fraud taking place. If you are a seafarer, a new seafarer, you know how to build a CV, you know where to book for a training center, you know which company is here. You can apply for a job because we vetted them, we proved them before they coming on. So this is what we wanted to make sure that the people feeling like they are being taken care of and they are having the right start in their career. You know that job is 1/3 of our adult life. So why not build the job process in a way where it take care of more than just apply for the job. Your social connection, your well-being is also coming to place. So as you mentioned from the very beginning, the hood is not about the technology. It's we very much believe that it's about changing the culture of our industry, moving from a more or less transactional culture to a very human-centric one and more adaptable to the younger generation with their needs to be, to have the communications, the transparency, and of course the digital access. And I think this is the first step that we will evolve towards.
So that's interesting. I appreciate your view on that because what you're trying to do is meeting the user where they are as opposed to trying to adjust something. As I guess you reflect, as I reflect on it, I think you're right. LinkedIn being a little bit more corporate. However, I will say, and I think there's a lot of people in my shoes that I definitely take the time. If somebody contacts me and says, hey, I'm a seafarer and I had this happen. Do you have time for me? Because I'm looking for a job. And it was somebody who went to the same school that I did. So we had those things to comment. I try to take that. One of the things I'd love for you to talk about a little bit is what were some of the challenges? Because it sounds like you faced it really well. And when you built this out, what was some of the challenges that you tried to have to overcome to get people, maybe not so much the target audience, but to get some of the companies to come and sit with you and to work with you to get highlighted on this platform? Because I think the users are less of the issue because they're going to go where they feel comfortable. But if they're posting jobs or other things, those folks are going to be more of how do you get them on board to see your vision?
Very interesting question. Instead of answering your questions, I would just wanted to tell you a very popular saying in Vietnam that my mother always told me that, having a nice skin is not as good as having a thick skin. And what it meant is sometimes all it takes is you have to be as persistent and as thick-skinned as possible. These 5 people can say, no, I'm not interested. I don't know how many conferences I have been to and meetings and coming to in front of a CEO, a crewing director, or a crewing manager and said, hello, I want to introduce myself. I want to introduce my company. And they just wave their hand and said, we don't need that. Of course, I've been through all of that. And after every of the meeting is always, a little downtime, like, wow, I can't believe how hard it is to talk to people. But believe it or not, maritime industry and especially crewing people are actually, I would say, ripen for change. You can skim across the surface of the few, I would say less than 5% people who are so much resistant to change or having full of doubts, not even wanted to listen. I'm just straight away saying no. Those are the minority. Interesting enough, the more I talk to the people who dealing with not sitting on very top, let's just say, but dealing with the crewing struggle, the strategy, knowing that the company are needing to find a better way to handle. Everyone know in the shipping and especially ship management industry, the crewing budget is always almost 50%, if not more. than the budget of the vessel that they manage. So it is somewhere that we can actually, always can try better. However, when technology is developed, it's always about technical, it's always about green energies, new stuff, new machinery. It doesn't really look at how we can do the recruitment of the people better. It's always rely on the third party managing agency sitting, the other continent away. It's always rely on a couple of local recruiter who going out in the park or posting things on Facebook in order to recruit people. So I will always say that here I'm going to build you a tool that's going to be completely different from anything that you are using. It's going to be the platforms that give you the ability to have transparency for the first time, despite being working from different teams, different continent, different country. You'll be able to see how your recruitment strategy is going. You'll be able to connect directly with your candidate. You'll be able to remove all of this potential for scam, for bribery, all this middleman. And you for sure will be able to connect and develop talent much quicker. And as time go on, our profit and our value would grow with time, because this is what we target for. We're not target for solving the problem of today, but we are solving the problem in the next 5 years, 10 years, when the Gen Z and Gen Alpha are coming on. This is what you're going to do, because other industry already do it. It's not something that I create out of the moon, it's not brand new. It's just not yet been done in maritime industry. People just doesn't think that they need to invest so much money or effort into building something just for this. But every company I talk to saying that, oh, we have something of our own. We have our own portal, we have our own website, we have our own little app. But what is there for the common people? It's
Right.
just for you and your own people. What is out there for the whole industry as a whole? There is none yet. We are using LinkedIn and Facebook. It's for the world. It's not built for maritime industry. Therefore, the application is very limited. So I can say that I'm building this for you as a specific company that can be benefit from it. And I have managed to convince a few. So I'm happy, and I will continue my, stick face strategy, knocking on people's door.
So what is, all right, so firstly, a ton of great gems there you've dropped. First thing is, your mother is right. Thick skin is better than pretty skin. If you have both, that's great. But I could tell you, if you take that strategy, you're definitely going to be in the commercial side of the business, whether it's shipbroking or something else, man, because there's a lot of getting hung up on the phone. Yeah, I could tell you those stories over and over again. But something I want to go back to a little bit. You talk about building, you talk about sitting in, going to these companies that first maybe are apprehensive and said no thank you, and then over time they may have more interest in your pitch, which I think is interesting, is I'm building this for you, not trying to fit something that's for everybody, i.e. LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, so on. Of the features and of the things that, just a little bit of a preview, if you can, what are some of the things that have really resonated, whether it's with the seafarers, cadets, or even the crewing department that have gone, oh, that's the feature we've been looking for. And I know from my 6+ years as a product manager, you always get that, when you get that right, it's like, oh, that's what I want to do. But then it's like, could you do these other things? And that's where it gets like, the long tail of the product management, the product manager evolution. You get the 80-20, right? If you get that 80%, you'll get a lot of loyal people, but then that 20% you're always chasing. But let's focus on that 80%, on the big picture, big ticket items. What are one or two things that are really resonating with either side, on the platform today?
I love talking about that, and you're going to have to try and shut me up, okay? Because this is like really my favorite thing to talk about. So start off straight with young people. So they say young cadet, maritime student, first out of university. We teach them how they can build CV in a brand new way, how they can build a perfect maritime fitted CV for themselves. And instead of going to, open up or pay for an AI subscription and they generate a CV for you, we say this is completely free. Your professional profile is going to be your CV. You update all the information that you need, and this is completely private. No one else can see it unless you're willing to expose it. You're willing to make it public. No one will be able to see this because this is private, first of all. We understand that people are worried about their data being used elsewhere. And number two is that it's just a click of a button. So it uses the tab method. So all the information you put in are already predefined in our tab functions. Once they put in whatever information that they have, being it their work experience, the company, the vessel type, the engine type, already predefined. So you just have to click, drop, and select. And then you click one button, generate CV, and voila, the CV come out in 3 seconds. Already been preset in PDF format, already have your name and the date that the CV in. So every time you wanted to change something, you want to update something, you just update your profile and you regenerate a new CV. This is a feature that people actually really love because it makes because in maritime there are so many times you have to change your CV every time you get a new vessel assignment, which is 4 months, 6 months later. Every time you get a new training certificate, you have to update this. So we make it in a way where it's always updatable. The second part is the documentation wallet. So how we imagine what is different between the maritime recruitment and normal recruitment is that seafarer carry hundreds of pages of paperwork, document, licenses, SCCW certificate, medicals, whatnot. There can be the list go on and on as per the ship requirement, the flag requirement, the company requirement. And it had always been like the most painful thing is be able to send this bunch of documents to the company by email, by Viber, by Facebook messengers. Or actually you have to print it out, you have to go to the office and hand it over to them. They make a copy of it and they give it back to you. I say, why eliminate all of that? The seafarer take a pictures of their document, they upload it in the document wallet, which have corresponding type of document, the expiry date, everything been set out for them. And what they do is instead of sending this, they just share the access control with the recruitment company. It's live. Every time you update your document wallet on the app, the recruitment company who you apply for the job see what you update. They see it and you can know exactly when your document expires and you can check it themselves. So instead of, having this transaction coming up and forth, the platform is in a way where I share with you the access to my profile. You see my CV, you see my document. If I don't like you anymore, I can just turn off that access and you don't see me anymore. And that's it. That's how it works with us. Very straightforward for the seafarer. So by the time they apply for a job, all they need to do is click share or not share, and that's it. That's all they need to do. And for the company, which all the crewing people really love, is exactly this ability. The number one is that they get an automatic notifications to the candidate, which work really both way. Every time they make a movement in the platform to access or to process the candidate receives a notification. This is something I call the ghosting pandemic. Do you know how people apply for a job on LinkedIn and sending out hundreds of applications and never hear back from any of the recruiter or hear back from the company? It's like a shoot in the dark. Have no idea what's going on. I don't know when's the last time you applied for a job. This is very frustrating. But the company would tell me they don't have enough time to reply to everyone. And this is something that we create so that it's automatically update the candidate so they don't have to go and ask the recruiter every time, have you seen my CV? Is there any update? Because it's automatically processed on the platform. It's alive. So imagine it's one door that you're looking from both sides, the seafarer side and the recruiter side. So every time an action being taken from the recruiter side, the seafarer see it live on their side of the app. And the second part is exactly the ability to what we call the future talent. So what I noticed on the maritime recruitment is sometimes you receive hundreds and hundreds of CV, and it being it a paper CV or digital CV, you just choose one person for the job, and the rest of the CVs being wasted. Many times it's not being put into a basket somewhere that you can use it again.
Right.
So what we imagine is, yeah, exactly. So that if you have taken time to take a look at the candidate, maybe he or she not perfect for this job, but maybe there's a future job that you can actually hire them for. So why don't you mark them as a future talent? I give you a dedicated space. So all of these suitable candidate, but not yet perfect for the job, can be always set on standby. So every time you post a new job, instead of just searching for the wide market again, make a notification for the people that you have already scanned and let them know that there is a job and maybe they want to reapply to. Maybe there is a chance that they will be able to get the job. So notify them instead. So That's what I think is more sustainable in a way and build more reputations that your CV are actually being valued. Despite whether or not you get the job, you always be willing to stay around and waiting for the perfect opportunity in the company. So those are the few. I can go on and on and on, but I wanted to tell everyone something very interesting that a few days ago we launched a new feature. So now you can actually use, before you can chat on the hood, but now you can do voice call and video call. So the candidate and the recruiter are actually can quickly jump onto an interview with each other, just a few seconds, just to say hi, just to see whether or not, you like the vibe of the candidate, whether or not you have any things that you needed to talk about before the official interview. Our voice and video calls is open source, so it is very light. You can use it without, even if you have low data package in your phone. You can even use it if you are in an area where WhatsApp and Facebook is restricted by VPN only, because it is one of, let's just say, the solutions that very similar to Zoom or Google Meet. It works perfectly on your mobile.
Again, a lot to unpack there, but one of the things that I love what you're talking about and what you're doing is just trying to find a way to streamline work for both sides of the equation. And I think that that's an interesting thing. I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. Is there any plans, or are you looking at AI to assist in this building? Is this something that you guys are looking at? Obviously, AI is all over the place. It seems that maybe there could be some assist for both sides to maybe identify a good opportunity for a candidate or a good opportunity for both sides.
Definitely, we look at AI from the very beginning when we designed the platform, but I decided not to proceed with it yet because I don't want to make something half-baked. Using the power of AI is something very special because you don't just put it there for the sake of saying that I have an AI power platform. You have to actually make it work and make it meaningful to the people who are going to use it. And maritime industry, there's one thing that we wanted to really want to use AI for, is for the company in order to shift through hundreds of candidates applying for the job, to rank them by the criteria, to rank them by suitability. It is rather very complicated because it requires someone to have the in-depth understanding of the importance of each of these criteria in order to give them a metric, in order to, what you call it, the matrix, in order to sort out the candidate. And we know that this can only work if we have a large database of people first using it, so that we can then learn from the people what do they actually need and how do they actually going to use this AI feature. Because this is something that we wanted to put it in our 2026, 2027 development, that we're going to be able to use it in order to have the candidate set their criteria, get a job notifications directly, have the company to shift through hundreds and thousands of candidates easily. But definitely I can see that there is this trend of overusing of AI, and I highly doubt that it's going to make huge difference, because it can help you on some level. Repetitive tasks can be cut down and make it quicker and easier to select and search for the candidate. However, maritime is also a people business. Crewing is a people business. Sometimes nothing beats you meeting or seeing the candidate in person. They might look very good on paper, but paper cheats. So the human element.
Yeah, that's a fantastic observation. And I'm going to go back to another little thought as you were mentioning the way that you set up the candidates update and the way they could keep their thing. I worked for a company called Q88, and Q88,
I know them.
on the tanker side, that was a very similar thing in keeping the documentation up to date. And you could, the ship owner can share with other ship owners, and depending on are they pool partners or whatever. But I thought that when you were talking about that, I was thinking that's exactly the way, or conceptually, not exactly because it's different, but conceptually, that's the same sort of idea, in that you're keeping somebody up to date on their certificates, on where they are in their career. It's the same way that ship owners keep up to date on certificates on that particular platform. And maybe there's others. I know a lot of the class societies do the same thing. I'm looking at it from Q88 just because of my experience. I want to pivot a little bit, and I want to talk about something that you were mentioned in a great article by Splash recently about, one of the reasons driving what you're doing. And that is the issue around companies that are less than above board, scamming, cheating, cadets especially, but maybe junior officers as they get started their career. Talk a little bit about your experience in dealing with that when you sat on the crewing side, and talk about, how this impacts the industry from not only a personal point of view of the seafarer, but then the industry as a whole, because that's going to affect future recruitment and training. And I don't want to go into the industry that I'm going to worry about scams and so on and so forth.
Yes. So I think everyone who work in crewing know that there is the dark side of crewing that we cannot deny. The fact that ship owner and ship manager usually use a lot of manning agency and recruiters that are not totally under their responsibility. So we call this third party agency. But of course, there is also existing in their own agencies, just because they're sitting in such a distant, very local area that they have no control over transparency that's going on. They can only wait until something happens in order to know that the scam has happened, briberies that happen. But personally, I have talked to many seafarers during my years of working in crewing, and a lot of them tell me horrific story about how much they have to go through just to get the job. Imagine that from the crewing side, we are begging for people to take a job. We have an opening and we said, I need a crew, give me a crew. And then when you talk to the crew, they said, I have to pay this amount of money in order to get the job. I have to work for free in the office, cleaning the office in order to take the job, going so far as one of the crews reach out to us and talk to us about this, that there are actually sexual exploitations taking place in the local level. And it caused them extreme mental distress, so much so that they could not even go back to sea or take another job in maritime industry anymore. And this really is something that hung very heavy in my chest. And this is why I developed the way in the platform where I can only allow MLC certified and government certified agency to take place in this platform. I can only allow the recruiters that belong to this company it can only allow them to access the candidate. No other people can access this candidate. And I give the tools to the people to report any company and any recruiter with, ever suggesting to take money, ever suggesting bribery. Their identity will be protected. We will raise this to the ship's owner, to the people who are responsible for this agency, whichever country they are in order to protect them. This cannot remove completely everything that happened in the industry, and this is too big of a task for one company like us who just a startup to start trying to tackle. It's something that the whole industry has to face, and the ship owner and the ship manager needs to take more accountability for how are they sourcing the crew, how are they taking the crew from the market, whether or not they have the complete transparency going on in their workflow, whether or not they be able to control the very end of the people who talk to the seafarer. And this is something that we must do, because other industry has proven to go through the same path and yet be able to tackle it perfectly well. We just have too many complications, too many narrow visions that my country has this law, my province has this law, my company has this law. So there are many people manage to wiggle in between this gray area because we set too many boundaries between ourselves. So if we were as an industry can open up completely on the governmental level, on the corporate level, down to the local government level, agree on a transparent frame line in order to do recruitment for seafarers, I believe that this matter can be tackled. And it have tackled in other countries already. The Eastern European used to be riddled with these issues, no more. And now we have to try and address it into a more development countries, such as in the Philippines, in India, in Vietnam. We are trying our best in order to give people the tool, but we know that this matter have to be taken care of by a much higher authority than us. And we can only play our small part and saying, if you want a solution, I will give you a solution, but you're going to need to do a lot more than that.
This idea of there are seafarers and cadets who go to academies and in certain places that you outline, and then they can't find a job or they have to go through all these hoops. I know that's a matter that a fellow podcaster, somebody I've gotten to know who's been on the podcast, Carl King, he talks a lot about with that same sort of problem. He was exposed to it, I think, firsthand in the Philippines. He went down there a couple of years ago, and his podcast does focus on that. And a lot of the outreach and work that he does really focuses on that, which is kind of part of the reason why as I started to understand what you're trying to do, made it interesting for you to talk to you about this because, coming from the U.S., it's either feast or famine in the U.S. A lot of the jobs that people take in the U.S. are U.S. flag. Mm. So when I got out of school in 1994, a long time ago, a lot of you may not even been born. As a side note, I went to the doctor the other day, and the guy in front of me, his birthday was like a few weeks after I graduated college. And I'm like, oh, wow, I'm old. But anyway, like I said before, I may be old. I don't feel old. So the point is like, there were no jobs. I actually sailed as a deckhand on a tugboat, and then I sailed as an AB on an oil tanker for a year before I got promoted, even though I had my third base license. And I'm seeing, relatively recently, there are tons of jobs. And you kind of just go through it because of the laws and the companies. And even if you have to go through a union, it's not the end of the world compared to a lot of what other parts of the world have to go through, which even though, like I said, I've been around for a while, it's a part of the industry that I'm unaware of what's happening. And I appreciate you and Carl and others bringing this to light. KSN is another podcast. He does a great job on bringing a lot of these issues to light. I want to talk briefly also about the mental health aspect. Huge part of our industry. I had Pam Kern on, who is an ex-seafarer. She worked on cruise ships and then became a licensed social worker, and now really works with companies and with individuals on the mental health aspect. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing, and you kind of alluded to it. Do you have a bad experience or a horrible experience when it comes to sexual exploitation or assault or other things, or even just monetary exploitation? That plays a big role in the mental health of our seafarers. Talk a little bit about what you see there on the platform, and maybe a little bit of a way that you see forward, whether it's using your technology or other technologies to help.
Yeah, so mental health issues, I think, wasn't very much highlighted until the recent year. Before that, it was a little bit like, okay, you talk to a doctor or you go home, we sign you off, and that's it at the end of the day. So I'm actually feeling very grateful that the whole industry started to take this matter of mental health seriously. However, I like to point out that these issues need to be taken much more serious than what we are trying to do now from the corporate side, instead of trying to just commercializing it by, or just putting a nice name tag onto it that I have mental health service. First, start off by actually understanding that the mental health that we are offering right now is a solution to a very solvable problem. So dig deeper into what causes this mental health, because when you have the cause, your problem was not just to provide the support and someone to talk to, but actually to solve the problem. I mean, we talk a great deals about things without actually doing much about it. Seafarers being on board and suffering from mental illness or even suffering from depression. Reason why the company doesn't provide internet connections to talk to their family. There is a toxic culture on board. There is, no shore leaves. You can be stuck on a ship for many months without seeing or talking to anyone else other than your crewmates. This is something that we need to solve. Of course, there is a bribery and scams that are happening in job applications. Companies that opening up to others to take advantage of the seafarers. So these are the things that I think is very solvable problem that we can actually first try to find a solution to it. And then, of course, we're talking to teaching people understanding that mental health is something that as important as physical health, education of the people. We on the platform trying to set up a separate page called the We Care page on our tab. We're trying to convince our maritime organization, especially charitable organization, to come on to the platform. It is completely free for them to be there. They just need to, it's similar to any social media that they are a part of, but this is where the place where the most vulnerable part of the workforce is going to be there. So I would say that if you are already having a page or an account on Facebook and LinkedIn, why don't you open an account on the Hood? It is free. We wanted you to be there. It have the ability for people to just say that if you have a problem, search the app, look at the account, and check the phone numbers on it. You can directly talk to the people, chat with them, call them using our app instead of having to, get a phone number and have an email. Sometimes it's not the most convenient things to do. We managed so far to partner up with Ice One in the Philippines, with Sailor Society, who are very graciously wanted to participate in our ideas. And I think we have a very long way to go to convince more company to help us and to provide the expertise, because we are not expertise in addressing mental health. I would say, honest to God, that I cannot solve the matter of mental health. I can only offer what is my take on it, and trying to bring in the expert, trying to bring in people that have knowledge and experience to help out. And this is where I see the whole idea, that we need to collaborate more as an industry. There's not much competition here. Is it basically we can solve a lot of problems if we think that if we can think of each other as collaborators instead of competitors. And being, of course, being a corporate, you always have to put the bottom line as one of the very important things. But on the other hand, if you're not taking care of your workforce, one way or another down the line, your bottom line will be affected. So I hope that we can also see it on the long-term point of view as an industry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. This goes back to a similar conversation that I was privy to, where somebody was talking about fuel savings and greening. And it was a fairly prominent senior person in the industry. He said, hey, if I could save money by, better routing, by, cheaper fuels, or make more money because I'm burning cleaner fuels, doing all these things that are going to lessen my impact, which makes me a better tradable ship, which makes me, I can make more money. If I can make more money over time, that's a good thing. And I think that this is a parallel type idea. We've unpacked a lot of the heavy stuff. I'd love to finish up with this question. You're a startup. You're probably all over the place. Josephine and I had a very brief encounter in North Shipping. I think the both of us had the same idea. We were introduced by somebody else. And then as she walked away, I walked away. I go, wait a minute. That's Josephine. I should talk to her more because she could come on podcast. I think we both had that feeling, which is, perfectly normal, because if you are at North Shipping or Posidonia or any of these other really big conferences, you meet so many people. It's a blur. You're trying to figure out what's your next 6 moves. Where do I need to go? Who do I need to meet? In terms of your job, in terms of just all sorts of things. So I know you're traveling, you're doing a lot of things. You're sitting in Cyprus, so probably got to do a lot of travel, whether it's to Greece, Europe, out to the Far East, Singapore, the Philippines. What are you throwing in your carry-on bag, or what's by your nightstand, if you even have time to read stuff? Because I do find I'm guilty of, I'm really burned out. I'm just going to look at stupid stuff on Instagram.
No, I'm actually very, very grateful that there is this habit of reading that it's actually in my family in a very young age. But we're starting out as reading manga, Japanese manga when I was young. But I do love very much reading. I spend all of the time, especially on the plane. I cannot sleep, and I don't really like to watch movie on the plane. So I only listening to audiobook. I recently have this kind of shift into my interest. So before I read a lot of a fiction book, but now I'm actually interested in reading biographies. So I'm reading a lot of biographies. I think because of the journey that I'm going through with the company, with the startup, knowing that I'm still having a lot to learn, and there's so much of shortage in knowledge and experience that I need to fill up quickly. That I started gravitating on, reading people who already set up a company, who are the founder. So I'm reading so many founder books, and the most current ones that I'm reading right now, I would say, I think the name of the book is Born of Born of This Land, and it is about the founder of Hyundai industry. I don't know if you know. Yeah, his name, I think his name is Mr. Chung, and it's this fantastic story about how he coming from one of the poorest family in South Korea, run away from home 3 times, trying to escape his destiny to become a farmer, trying to open his own business, starting out with, a garage that's fixing cars, to become one of the biggest, I think, companies in South Korea, and building literally the world's biggest shipbuilding company in the world, the Hyundai industry. And this is mind blowing. And I still remember it's one of these very interesting, I think it make the lasting memory of me is when he was so poor that he have a team of people working with him in this rice shop, and they have a flea infestation, and they were trying to escape the flea, and they cannot sleep on the floor, they cannot sleep on the bed, so they decided that they're gonna place water bowl underneath the table to stop the fleas from climbing up on the table, and they're gonna sleep on the table. And then the next day he still find the fleas on the bed, and he was wondering how did they climb up. And he watched it the whole night when he realized that the flea climbed to the ceiling and dropped themselves on onto the table that they were sleeping on. And I just thought, wow, this is something that I don't know why it stayed in my head for so long. And I'm almost finishing the book right now, where he's already become successful, but that memory, that graphic descriptions of what he'd been through in the beginning is still, very fresh in my head. And I would recommend anyone who wanted one of the best, rag to riches story. This is something that you can definitely check out. Yeah, it's very interesting.
One of my favorite founder stories is a book by Phil Knight, Shoe Dog.
The Shoe Dog. I read it.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That was a really, really interesting one. And if anybody's not familiar, it's just a story about Nike and how it came about and all the trial and tribulation. But really what stuck out to me, maybe not necessarily in the same vein as what you're talking about, where it was a specific story, but for me, it was just the whole idea of building up a long-term relationships, which is where he kind of got to start with the Japanese shoemakers, right?
Yeah.
And that's a really big critical part of it. Now it's all different, but his early days, it was working with the Japanese shoe manufacturers. And he was like one of the first people ever really to do it that way. And building over time, and the decision makers get moved or moved up, and you kind of go up with them, especially in our industry. And especially for those that are starting out, it is such a critical thing to understand that you really want to have a wide network, and especially in this space. And I tell people all the time, I was on the broking side, and somebody that you're competing against as a broker today could be working for a ship owner tomorrow. And then 6 years from now could be a charterer. So don't treat your competitors poorly. You treat them well. Josephine, this was a great conversation. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It was great to meet you earlier in the year in North Shipping. Maybe our paths will cross again as we move about the industry. I wish you the best in kind of bringing the really good things to seafarers and hopefully helping them, maybe even the playing field and have a better understanding going forward. Thank you, Josephine, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Chris, for having me. And thank you, everyone, for listening to this conversation. I hope to see everyone around.